Hello and welcome to Elevate. I'm Randy Taylor. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here today. Elevate is a show bringing you in-depth interviews with top experts in the world of human potential and behavior. My real ultimate hope in this is that you take what you learn and you do something with it. Today's guest is one of the most remarkable men that I've ever known. His message on dealing with adversity and overcoming fear is really beyond anything that we can learn in textbooks. His life experience and message of what it truly takes to get knocked down and to get up and keep going and keep growing, I'm certain is going to stay with you for a very long time. I know his story well, very well. I've known him for quite some time. He's been my best friend for more than 30 years. Now a radio host, founder of a chain of tattoo shops, self-taught illusionist and hypnotist, magician, world-renowned escape artist, TV appearances on Dragon's Den, America's Got Talent, Italy's Got Talent, Australia's Got Talent, Canada's Got Talent, author, speaker, father of five. I know what you're saying. I'm kind of with you right now that like most of the people in the audience today, we all hate him. It's my great pleasure to welcome my best friend and the guest for today, Daniel Paulin, or Danny Z, as he's known in the entertainment world.
Thank you, Randy.
Listen, great to have you on the show. This is quite quite an unusual sort of format for Dan and I, having been in broadcasting for years together, but to turn this around and turn the microphone and the camera on you. But starting at the beginning, I mean, our backstories are quite similar. I grew up in poverty and parent alcoholism, ended up homeless on the streets at age 14, and I think that that the fact that we started very much the same probably had a lot to do with, with us clicking as friends all those years ago. Tell me about your start.
Well, I can say my background or my start wasn't different than yours. I came from a broken home. My parents divorced when I was 4. I was raised by a single mother, 3 boys, and certainly a long journey, as any mother would have back in the day. I mean, I'm in my 50s. So when you take that turn back to those 70s as a single parent, it was a tight, tough time. So we certainly lived very, very lean, and people coming in and out of your lives. And my journey started very, very young. I found myself living on the streets at the age of 13.
And, it's when you tell a story like that, and again, I mean, it was interesting when we first met and we kind of went, oh, me too. That you start that way and all of a sudden there's somebody that you can relate to. But for someone who hasn't gone through that, and you said, you ended up, living on the streets at age 13. So to go from, 13 to being able to actually be in a position that, you can take care of yourself. What were some of the things that went on in your life that, allowed you to go from one day to another to another?
I often look back and reflect on that. And when you're at a very young age, you're put in a position where you need to make a decision. Now, when we look back at this at the time, it was a lot different than it is now. Some of the viewers that are watching this will say social services or community awareness or family. When we're looking at the late 70s, early 80s, all the resources weren't there that were available now. I was put into a position where I needed to do something. Equally, there was availability that wouldn't be available now. When I was 13, I got a job. And if a 13-year-old came to apply at one of my businesses, I would scratch my head and wonder now. But we still got to look back at the time. And when that did occur, I did just that. I went to the farm labor pool. I stood in line like everybody else. I got a job on a farm and I had to make ends meet. I didn't believe I had the resources. I didn't believe that I could go somewhere for help, or I wasn't educated enough to know that that was an option. So I think that was a real turning point in my life, because at even that very young age, I was forced to fend for myself. And I think that really was the start of everything for me, because I had to believe in myself and believe I was capable of doing something. I had to push past my own boundaries, and I had to wipe the tears away and just do something. And I think that if you and I both looked, or even the people who are watching this, looked at the stories of our grandparents or great grandparents who arrived in Canada with $4 and no language, like, I think that the story of me at 13 getting a job was just my time. It was my opportunity to step forward and do what I needed to in order to survive. And I think that survival instinct is something that you and I share. We've talked about when you're put against the wall, there's really two things to do. You can just sit and bury your hands in tears, or you can get up and do something about it. And I'm not a strong man or a brave man. I'm not trying to sell you something that isn't the case. I just survived. I went into survival mode, and I believe anybody should do. I just tried to survive. I just tried to do something. So I went to work.
And again, necessity, the mother of invention, and the fact that you're talking about. And I went and got a job on a farm. I caught chickens when I was, very young. I think it was for $12 a shift to go and go into these chicken and turkey barns and work all night long and hack your brains out and hit your head on the roof and all of these things. So, sometimes people will romanticize, oh, in the old days, we had to walk back and forth 5 miles to school in the snow, uphill both ways, right? So, but what were some of the jobs you had?
Wow. How, as a child, what kind of jobs do you get? I did just like you. I caught chickens. I actually worked at a golf course where I picked worms at night, overnight, for fishing companies.
They were delicious, right?
Yeah. I literally did a little bit of everything. But my first real main job that I did get at the farm labor pool was at a pig farm. And I shoveled manure at a pig farm. And I remember riding. I had a yellow 5-speed bike, looked like a 10-speed bike style, but I was a smaller child, and I had a 5-speed bike. And I remember riding the bike from my home to the labor pool, but I didn't have a lock. So I actually hid my bike behind some bushes behind the church and walked to the labor pool. And I remember waiting in line, and the gentleman who owned the pig farm, nobody wants to shovel pig manure. So he was offering the job to everybody, and nobody would take it. And I'm like, I'll take it. And when he exhausted all of the men or the larger people to do it, finally he said, all right, kid, if you want to try, let's go. And I jumped in the back of this pickup truck, and I drove the 10 or 15 minutes it was to his farm, and I spent the day shoveling manure. And I remember at lunchtime sitting in the ditch in front of
no one for people that have never been around farms all that much either, both turkeys and pigs, that manure you're talking about is just toxic, right?
It is a toxic smell, and you're working right with the animal, so it literally gets all over you. And at lunchtime, I found myself sitting in the ditch, literally crying. And the gentleman came over and brought me a sandwich, and I just sat in the ditch and ate the sandwich and cried. And at the end of the day, he said, you did good. He paid me. He drove me back to the labor pool, and I walked over, and someone had stolen my bike.
No.
And that is...
I never knew that story. Jeez.
Yeah,
really,
and I remember being so covered in manure, needing a shower so bad, being literally so sad and hungry. And I walked to the bush, and the bike was gone. And I had to walk across the city in that state to go to an empty home and have a shower and get up and do it again the next day. So it really broke me. I can almost feel the tears welling up as I told you, because when you talk that story, the emotions, that real moment of realizing my bike was gone. And to a 13-year-old child, that's your only means of transportation, especially when you live so far. So what do you do?
Yeah, it really kind of strikes me, and and hearing that story, and everyone has, I'm sure listening has a story. And one of the things when I hear stories like yours is that I always get that feeling that I'm talking to somebody that obviously made it out, and so that story stores the information in your brain. It stores the emotions in your brain. And for so many people, and I'm hoping part of the message, today of this interview is that the storage of that information and those past emotions has the potential to lock you in place and say, this is the best you can hope for, kid, right? This is how it goes. People steal your bikes, you shovel pig manure, you make no money, and that's your life. And people end up, it doesn't, I'm sure you've thought about this 1,000 times.
And what do you do? Like, even as a child, as a father, I can reflect on my own children and the hardships they have and what they go through, and we try to protect them in every way. But as a 13-year-old child, which essentially is what I was, if you don't have the resources, what do you do? Now, I don't remember sitting on the grass and crying in my hands. I probably did. I don't remember walking home and probably being so down, which I probably was. But I had to put one foot in front of the other. I had to go home. There was nowhere else to go. I had to make money. I had to pay the rent. Like, that was what I was put up against. The decision for me was to go to a shelter or a family and children's services. I would have had to go to school and say I'm homeless, or I had to just do it. And not knowing what was on the other side, not understanding that there was potential people or family or someone who would have stood up and helped me in some fashion, not knowing those resources were available, I just survived. So I just went to work. And then when the landlord came, I put the money in the envelope and I handed it to him out the door. Like, what do? You just get through the day. And that's how my journey began.
So between pig farms, catching chickens, and all of those things, there were obviously some things that happened between that and the first time that we met. I was in radio down in Niagara. I was hosting a morning show, but when you and I met, obviously you were not still covered in manure when we met. So some things that happened, in that space. What happened between the farm and, the time we met?
So many things. To take it back quickly and briefly to the farm.
Yeah, just go through a laundry list of, from the pig farm, because I think it's important for people to understand the progression that it takes to go from here to there.
Yeah, I am happy to take this journey with you. I'm going to mold and wrap up the pig farm briefly for you. I probably would still be a pig farmer, but one day I was riding to the farm and I could smell bacon for miles, and the farm burnt down. And literally the barns and everything burnt. And the man, his name was Albert. I remember riding a new bike that I had by then to the farm, and him literally in tears. And I hugged him because we had been friends by that point. And I remember him taking out his wallet and giving me all the money that he had in his wallet and saying he was so sorry, but my job had ended. And it's funny because he probably knew that I was only doing it because I was in need. People can see that for some reason. And for that man, he was good, and he was doing his part to make sure that I was doing whatever I needed to do and wasn't asking any questions. But that was a long ride home, and it didn't matter that I had a week's wage or 2 weeks' wage. The honest answer is now I was still a very young person, but without a job, and my journey began again. So by this point, I was in school. I was in grade 9 by this point, and I was trying my best to get an education when I went to school. Like, that's just what you do. And I found myself gravitating towards the trades. I was in a woodworking class. Now, I still took all of the classes that you take, but I found myself in a woodworking class. I had a teacher. His name was Mr. Groman. And teachers are pretty unique, pretty special people. I truly believe that all teachers are in some fashion. They have to look and recognize and find the good, the bad, and all of those things. And the teachers that really stand out are the ones that go beyond their certificate, so to speak. And Mr. Groman, he probably recognized, because my clothes were a little dirtier or a little more wrinkled, or perhaps because I wasn't bringing a bag lunch to school, he probably seen things that most people wouldn't. And he recognized in my first few weeks of woodworking class that I was a natural woodworker. I don't know how that was possible, because I probably had never touched a saw or a piece of wood other than to throw it in a fire or throw it away. But for some reason, he said, you would be good at woodworking. And he got me a co-op at a cabinet making company. And this co-op wasn't just a co-op, it was a co-op that would pay me to go. And that's where I say some people kind of shine a little bit differently, because he opened up an opportunity and he got me a job at a woodworking company.
It's it's so interesting. One of the great guys in my business, Jim Rohn, who was Anthony Robbins' mentor, always had this amazing capacity to take complicated things and make it simple. He said one time that what happens to us all. It's what we do with what happens that determines the people we become. Now,
Sure.
reflecting back, and I know that there's a lot more to your story than this, but reflecting back on your life, can you see or kind of recognize that if you were not open to, chasing down the opportunities, life would have been very different?
Yeah, when I look at the doors that opened, and this is a very important talking point for both of us. Here is with the pig farm and now with the woodworking company, somebody recognized probably my need and opened a door. I still had to make the choice to walk through it. I could have said no to Albert and the pig farm. I could have said no to the opportunity to work at this woodworking company. It was the fact that somebody recognized that perhaps I was in need. They offered that olive branch or that opportunity, and I acted on it. And when I did, I didn't just act on it. I really wanted to come forward with the best person that I could be with that opportunity, because I didn't have another option. I didn't have another job or another place to go. So I couldn't take the chance of losing this opportunity. So I treated it as though it was the most important opportunity. I treated it as though it was what was going to house me and feed me, because it was. So
yeah, in the moment, it just was, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't take it for granted. And I was kind and appreciative to the people who gave me that opportunity. And I brought the work ethics forward, because I knew that I was approaching these jobs with no real experience. So I had to show them that I was good, or I would try hard, or I would listen, or I would do whatever they asked me to do, absolutely the best of my ability, so that they would keep me. I was hungry for it. And
So
literally,
woodworking, high school, co-op pig farm. we can't leave
yeah.
a pig farm. Yeah, high school, woodworking shop. What other things happen in your life, and what other types of work did you do before we met at the radio station 30 years ago?
and there was a laundry list, because a lot of the opportunities that I had were part-time. So I found myself as a garbage man working in the heating and cooling industry, as a laborer on a construction site. I mean, the list literally goes on and on and on. And I did so many jobs just to get through. And at the end of high school, I created my own opportunity. My high school years, when I was in school, I needed an outlet. I needed something in order to keep myself focused. And I was definitely that child that could not sit still, could not get through the day. But I had artistic
He's
ability.
still that child too, buddy. Yeah.
I found myself always with pen in hand, or markers, or drawing in whatever capacity. And I found myself, my artistic self, really coming to fruition, pushing myself artistically. And I had an art teacher that wasn't as excited about me and my art abilities, because I was really trying different things. I found myself at lunchtime sitting in the cafeteria with 5 or 10 different colored Sharpie markers, drawing tattoos on people's arms and drawing my art. And my art teacher wasn't as excited. He thought, as a gifted artist, I shouldn't be wasting my art ability drawing on people. And I graduated high school proudly.
Now to back up, you're being very kind. he was very hard on you, true? What did he say to you?
Oh, absolutely. He actually, in grade 10, threw me out of his class. He actually said, if you're going to waste your art drawing on people's arms, you can do it somewhere else. You won't be doing it in my class. And that was my last art class, was probably halfway through my grade 10 semester. And my art teacher was happy to give me the credit to not be in that class. So I still went to school. I wasn't a great student. I was a 60 percenter, so to speak. I did what I could to get through the class. I wasn't super educated. I probably did the minimal effort, to be honest with you, to get through, but I needed the education and I needed purpose. And I graduated in 1988. I graduated high school and got my diploma. I got it on my own and I walked proudly out of high school, and it opened a new chapter in my life. So not knowing where I was going to go with a diploma, not knowing what that education or that multiple work background would do, I took the little bit of money that I had left and I did what anybody would do. I opened a tattoo and body piercing shop.
Of course. I mean, who doesn't do that? I mean, it's it's either that or a paper route. I
That's
went
right.
the paper
Yeah.
route, but the body piercing and tattooing was right there. And you started this company. You started very humbly with just tattooing a few people. Then you actually started a business, and then you expanded it. And what was the business called?
I truly started it with no experience, which sounds ridiculous, but I had a good fan base, so to speak. I had people that were supportive in the community and stood behind my venture, and created a business called Artistic Impressions. And the business is, I think, about 35 years old right now, and we created a chain of these businesses. We eventually had 5 tattoo shops, and it was a huge business in Southern Ontario.
And the great come to Jesus moment. I love this story, is running into your old art
Yeah.
teacher, right?
I remember I was probably in my early 20s, and I was at a department store looking for some supplies, and I bumped into this teacher, and the teacher was there, and he said, "Hi, Dan, how are you?" And I said, "Hi." And he said, "How are things? What are you doing with your life?" And I remember smiling and saying, "I'm really considering taking things easy. I might start to retire. I've opened a chain of body piercing shops, and they're so successful, I probably don't need to work anymore." So I gave him the nod and continued my shopping.
When are you retiring, sir? Yeah. That's amazing. So you go from, drawing on people's arms with Sharpies to starting a chain of tattoo parlors. And then, like any, normal Canadian, you say, I think I want to be in radio, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
With, again,
It wasn't.
Go ahead.
It wasn't quite that easy, and this is an important step.
All right.
I just didn't do it. I surrounded myself with like-minded people. I hired other people who I went to school with, who had that same passion or perhaps had that same struggling background. I eventually sold the tattoo shops to one of my high school friends who equally drew on people. So it wasn't just me. I surrounded myself with the right people who needed, to be honest with you, people who needed a community or needed a place. And I found those people, and I treated them with the same respect and hope that I wanted them to treat me with. And because of that, the business grew because we were a tight, like-minded group. And when my business became successful and I had some financial independence where I didn't need to work as hard anymore, I really put some thought to it and thought, if you could do anything, what would you do? And I found myself.
And again, anyone with absolutely no experience or schooling would say, I'll just pick a career and go and do it. It is interesting because that's going to become the theme of this interview, and you'll pick up on that, is that, not a great deal of preparation goes from one career to another. Not saying that it doesn't lead to great success, but we met some 30 years ago in radio. I was a morning host at a radio station down in Niagara. I'd been in radio in Toronto for a number of years before that. And you decided you wanted to work in radio again with no experience. I could tell my side of the story. Why don't you go ahead and fill in the viewers?
It was in the mid 90s, somewhere there.
Yeah.
And I just decided that I wanted to be in radio, having no experience. I certainly didn't have any background, didn't know anything about it, but I knew that I liked listening to it. So I thought that I should do it. And I went and started to volunteer at the radio station. I just went out to the road crews and started going to concerts with the t-shirt for the radio station and doing the things that the promo team generally would do. And whenever I was at the station, I found myself pressed against the glass, looking at the hosts and thinking to myself that I would like to be behind the mic one day. And I was polite and kind to as many people as I could. I tried to say hello and thank you and do every job that they would give me. And one day there was a producer position available at the radio station, and I applied. I thought I could do that. I mean, I'd never done it before.
Just so everyone knows, I mean, this was not just a producer position. This was the producer position for the morning show. So
Yes.
There's multiple hosts, there's newscasts, there's weather, there's traffic, there are commercials to play and music to play and callers to bring on. And it is the busiest show on the radio station. It's complicated. If you see all the equipment of what it takes to run a morning show, you would just walk out the door, but you didn't. And you came to me and said, hey, I could do it, right?
I did. I said, and it's you're even describing it lightly. It's more like the cockpit of an airplane.
Pretty much. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Yeah. But you came to me and said, give me a shot. I can do this. I had, I mean, this is a big time morning show. I mean, we're competing with all the major, radio stations across Southern Ontario. So it has to go well. I have no idea. I just assume from the way, if Dan, he comes across a little confident, right?
Pretty confident.
So, yeah. So he convinced me, oh, no, I got this. No. I've got, so I thought, terrific. I've got somebody, my producer just left. He actually quit live on the air. That was another story. But so anyway, so you go in and you take over, and now you're going to produce this morning show. So pick it up.
Next morning, 4:30 a.m., I find myself in the producer seat, and I'm looking at all these controls, and I'm ready to go. And you come in and you say, well, are you ready? And I say, well, I'm going to try my best. I here we go. And then you fired me.
Well, it was no. I let you ply your trade probably 20 minutes, and I thought and I think I was kind because I came into the booth. We had to grab somebody else because it was just a nightmare. Nothing was happening. Commercials are playing over each other. The microphones aren't turned on, and I think I walked into the booth and said, "I think you belong in a pig farm."
Well, you didn't say that, but I think you used different choice words with similar examples.
Yeah, I mean, the show was a mess, and I was not happy. So, so I fired him. That was our first meeting. Yeah.
So that was our first experience. And I think that after that experience, almost anybody would have just put their tail between their legs and went back to their business or went back to do anything because it was embarrassing and uncomfortable. But I left there and then I went into the back studio and I practiced.
And it's like in the back studios, it's like they have another cockpit of an airplane, only it's not live on air. And you got to practice there, right?
Practiced. So I sat back there and worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And time went by. And when I say time, probably months. I don't recall how long it took.
Yeah, I don't know. It had to be a while because I don't think I would have given you another chance in a week.
Yeah, no. It was a while. Yeah. And then for whatever reason, that position came available. And I looked at you with confidence and said, I got this. I want to do this.
Yeah, and he did. Yeah. I mean, he actually did. And then there's so much we have to cover, but this is a cool story. So I was in radio and television for 20 years. So the guy on the other side of the glass, Dan, the producer, sometimes he'll be mentioned on the show and things like that. But the person's job is to produce the show and make sure everything goes well. So we're like 2 weeks into into the show, and his producing is going well, and so we're in another booth. I mean, there's Joe, my sports guy, and Kim and other people who are on air.
Not even in the same room.
We're in a different room, but you can see each other through the glass, right? So we're going along, and then I don't know, we're doing this bit and we're talking about something, and all of a sudden, my producer turns on his microphone and starts talking. And I'm going, well, this is not supposed to happen. You're the producer. You're not supposed to do this. And then you started singing really badly. And before I knew it, we were in stitches, and we were all laughing so hard. And I didn't even have the thought process to say, you're not supposed to do this. Stop it. Before I knew what was going on, you just kind of muscled your way in and became a part of the show.
Yeah. And that's probably the best way to describe it, because it wasn't a common occurrence. Producers did just that. They sat in the back quietly, made their sound effects, their back beds, their noises or whatever. But I just felt that I had a voice and something to say. And when I brought up that pod, there was nothing you could do about it. I mean, I was the control.
Well, yeah, because you're controlling. You can shut my mic off, right? So it's I know. Right. And I could have, walked in and fired you, but for whatever reason, we all just started laughing. And then this went on day after day after day. And then we started getting all kinds of comments out in public and people on the phones and email and everything else. And then, Dan became a full-fledged member of the show. And the show went on. And, we won all kinds of awards, had nothing to do with you. But it truly became just, such good chemistry. And it was so fun to do the show. And I hope it was really fun for people to listen. And judging by the ratings and that, I guess it went well, but that was truly, and all the characters in that station, that all the work that we did together and the times that we had, probably one of the most fun times in our lives. Yes,
I agree. And it was effortless fun. And I think that that's how the listeners heard it. I think that they recognized that we were just enjoying each other, and it sounded so good that people loved the sound.
Yeah, I think for the listeners, it was just kind of, hey, if you're enjoying this too, cool, because we are. It's it kind of came down to that. We had George W. Bush on the radio. We had a fight with Howard Stern live on the air. We did a lot of really fun things. So this went on. I can't remember the number of years, but at the end of it, the station was sold. New management came in. They were paying me too much, and so they fired me. So I ended up having to go and get a job, and I went and started working in Toronto at CFRB in Toronto, and breaking up the team. You decided, all right, time to go on and move on to a new challenge. You decided not to stay in radio, and you went on into, of course, again, what's the natural thing to do? Go into a career of, magic and illusion as an escape artist with no experience, correct?
That makes logical sense. I mean,
everyone's sitting there going there and they're taking notes going, I bet he went into magic. Yeah. And so anyway, tell us about that. Yeah.
I still was in the tattoo industry, and it was still financially carrying dreams. So when the opportunity in radio passed, is the best way for me to describe it, that was my fun project. So I was put into that situation where I had to say, what's the next chapter? And I thought, I'm going to become a magician, which is ridiculous, because by this point I was in my early 30s. Nobody in their early 30s ever says, I'm going to become a magician and does something about it. But I bought some magic tricks, and I put a show together, and within a year and a half, I would have been 34. Within a year and a half, I signed a contract to do 5 shows a week in Niagara Falls every week. Doing my
you actually must have been tricking people into thinking that this really was magic.
It's really ridiculous when I tell the story, because
a
lot of my colleagues in the magic industry started doing magic when they were 8 years old. Like, it was just a lifetime of study, and I just thought it was fascinating. So
for all the children listening, experience and education means nothing, kids. Just go start something. Right. I mean, really, that in itself is the lesson. So you're headlining at Casino Niagara. So we were just there for a show a few weeks ago. It's a pretty amazing place, and you were there five days a week for how many years?
We used to have a beautiful facility called the IMAX Theater in Niagara Falls. It looked like a huge pyramid. They've recently tore it down, but somehow I persuaded a company that just does movies into letting me and my guys build a stage in front of the screen and do shows there 5 days a week. And Niagara Falls, the tourist industry of the world, they were able to sell tickets. And within 1 year of being at the IMAX, the casino and the neighboring hotels that own it hired me and gave me a theater that holds 685 people. And we were doing 2 shows a day, 7 days a week for 7 years without missing a show.
7 years. Absolutely. And this is stuff you learned online and in books.
Well, online wasn't that back then. If
Right.
you think about it, you go back 20, 25 years, you weren't searching YouTube.
So you went to the dollar store and bought the magic kits and you actually figured them out.
To be honest with you, there wasn't even dollar stores.
No.
It was really one of those things where
Folks, I'll tell you, because I mean, I've known Dan for so long and I've been to his shows and I've seen his hypnosis shows. I've seen his magic shows of levitating and making a table go across stage, of making people, bark like a dog. I mean, it just absolutely. I remember one time I was at there was a house that you were house sitting. I think it was for sale one day, and you said, "Here, let me show you this." And he took out a deck of cards, had me shuffle it rather, and then gave it back to him. He was allowed to look through it for 20 seconds, and then said, "Okay, here are the cards." And one by one, with the deck turned down, he went through every card in the deck and told me what the next card was.
Yeah.
And it just, so, it's
know,
one thing to say, just flying by the seat of your pants. I think an important thing to say in this moment is, how much time did you put into that? I don't care if you had, trainers or anything else, but how much time did you put into that to learning your craft?
I didn't have trainers. When we started, we had to reverse engineer a magic trick. So because I couldn't go to somebody and say, how do you make a table float? I had to get together. I got a handful of family, my cousins and my uncle, and we had to just sit down and say, if we were going to make a table float, how would we do it without people knowing how it's done? Or if we're going to make this trick happen or this illusion happen or whatever we're going to do, we had to reverse engineer it. We knew that we wanted the table to be in the air. We knew we wanted it to appear that it was floating, but we had to find a way to make it that nobody could tell how it was done. So
it was floating. Like you've done. No, Dan did that in my basement. He brought the table and just dazzled my daughter. And this table is floating around my rec room, and Faith is sitting going, this is nuts, right? It was off the floor and there were no strings. Okay, so anyway, we could go on and on and on about the magic show forever. So suffice it to say, you must have put in an enormous amount of time teaching yourself. Yes.
Yes, not just me, but again, my cousins and my uncle. The 4 of us worked it through and figured out how to do it. And then I had to practice and practice and practice. And I think my success in the magic industry came because magicians would come and see my show and then afterwards say, how did you do that? Because I wasn't doing anything the way a traditional magician would do it, because I wasn't a traditional magician. I think that if you follow the rules of magic, if you follow the greats, the David Copperfields, Harry Houdinis, if you pick any name, if you look at the pioneers of magic who set out what magic should be, and you followed in their paths, you can see how some of those effects are done. But because I wasn't that person and we were making it up, we developed a number of magic tricks that were unique just to me. And it gave me an edge compared to most other entertainers doing that same craft because I didn't do it like anybody else.
Henry Ford is so well known for a great quote a long time ago, who said when he started, the Ford Motor Company, that I'm looking for a good group of men who don't know what can't be done. And I hope everyone, hears that lesson in this, from, pig farmer to tattoo artist to magician, illusionist, hypnotist, all the rest of it. And then the next, of course, natural progression, anyone would say. So if that's going on in your career and you're there, what's next? Obviously, it's to be in a very, very, very serious motorcycle accident.
Yep, I was driving home from my show. Literally, it was on May 24th, 2012, I had just finished a show and I was driving home on my motorcycle, and a lady driving hadn't stopped at the stop sign. And as she progressed into the intersection, hit me in the truck that she was driving and just broke a ton of my bones and changed the future of who and what I wanted to be, because I was a wreck. I broke my wrists, my elbows, my shoulders, my knee. I had a ton of skin loss. And in a moment, my life came to a halt. My shows ended, my financial stability, my career, everything in a blink
was
stopped.
gone, just gone. I remember talking to you, and that was probably the first time in my life that I ever, we need to be honest with this too. This is not just, skipping through the field of daisies for everything. You were broken and you were down, and you in that moment, losing your career, losing finances, losing all of that. You were pretty shattered emotionally and physically, right?
This was in 2012. That would have put me 42 years old. And I had established myself into this magical career. And it was so successful that I had sold my tattoo shops. I was done with one career and poured myself in the other. Because we were doing 2 shows a day, 7 days a week, there wasn't time for other things. So I put all my eggs in this basket, and I had found great success at it. But my business structure and the people who would come to see me in Niagara Falls is a tourist town. They don't want to come the next week or 2 weeks or a month later. They are there to be entertained. And I didn't know if I would ever be able to use my hands again, my arms again. I didn't know if I would walk. I was just broken in every way. And not to get graphic, but when I was hit, I had slid on the road, the asphalt, for about 30 feet, and I had lost most of the skin on my hands. And as a magician, it turns out you need your hands and the feeling of being able to touch cards and coins and all of those things. And I was quite confident that at that point, my career was over. At that point, I was so broken, not being able to use my arms or walk or do anything. I truly thought that was it. And not that I was done in life, but I just meant that portion of my life, that career was done.
So just because we have so much more to cover, and I promised everyone this would never be War and Peace, but this could go on literally, because I know all of your stories and, being best friends for 30 years. Fast forwarding, you heal, you look around, there's a brick wall in front of you. Your magic career is kind of, shattered and gone. You make a decision to do what next? Once you've healed enough that you can,
I had to catapult myself back into the career. I didn't have a fallback. I didn't have something else to do. So I knew that I had to be this Danny Z character. And audiences aren't that forgiving. I was out of the entertainment industry for about 5 or 6 years, as I had a number of surgeries to put me back together. So I had to do something to put myself back in the limelight, so to speak. So I decided I would become an escape artist.
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, that's, people, I mean, people are probably mouthing it before you said it.
Right.
And logical. You decide that, I mean, obviously you had some background, you had some mentors around to become an escape artist. That's not just something anyone can do. So true. Is that what happened?
No, I'd never done it before.
Never done it before.
I thought that for the anniversary of Harry Houdini performing in Niagara Falls, the logical step would be to do an escape to honor him and that anniversary, and to push myself back in the limelight. So I, with contact of the helicopter company that was doing helicopter tours over the falls in Niagara Falls, I decided I would be hung from my feet while I'm wearing a straitjacket in Niagara Falls, and I would have to escape.
I was there. I remember it. And thinking, no, people, don't be afraid. He's done dumb stuff too. So that ended up happening. You started to, get your career back together again now as an escape artist, and you start putting it back together again. I mean, I know you're still you're still going through surgeries even today. You had one recently, but you're much better and further ahead. And then 2 years ago, you had to face something that no one should ever have to face. And I know it's tough to talk about, but I'm hoping that that your strength and ability to fight through is a lesson for people. What happened 2 years ago?
Well, we, like the rest of the world, experienced COVID. There's no question. I was doing about 200 shows a year, traveling all over the world, doing my escapology and magic, and my career got put back together because of that. And then I was doing America's Got Talent in Los Angeles, and I got a call, and they said that it turns out there was this thing that called COVID. So they were going to send me home for a week, because we all know all you need is a little cough syrup and a V8, and you are back in business. So everybody just assumed it would be just a week or 2 weeks, and 2 weeks turned into 2 years for everybody.
But that was that was the cusp of your performance on America's Got Talent, the night of, on the eve of it, you were sent home.
Yep, I was on Santa Monica Boulevard shooting a commercial for my presentation on America's Got Talent when the producer called and said, we have to send you home because of COVID. So I was devastated, but I did, like everybody else, assume that we'd be back in Los Angeles in 2 weeks or whatever. So went back home and did some stuff with the family, and the world locked down. And everybody who is viewing this, it wasn't just me. The entire world stopped. Everybody went home. Everybody looked out their windows wondering if there would be some normality, or wondering if it was the zombie apocalypse and everybody would be dead in 2 weeks. Nobody knew. So we all struggled, and time went on and on and on and on. And I found myself regrouping, trying to spend some time with my family and trying to redevelop relationships that, to be honest with you, I had lost because I'd been touring and on the road. I'm the first person to say I was an absentee father or husband. I wasn't the best version of somebody at home because we were on the road. So when I did come home, I'd be home for a few weeks, but I'd be gone a few weeks. So during this period, I was trying to spend as much time with my family as possible. And on September 18th in 2020, I went to my son's house to take him for lunch on his birthday. And I had found my son had passed away.
Yeah.
He was a 22-year-old boy. And it's something that nobody should experience, certainly no father. We've all experienced loss. If you haven't, God bless you, but we all experience loss in some way. For me, this was my firstborn son. His name is Mason, and he looked like me. He was named after me. His first name was Daniel, and I was taking my son out for his birthday, and I remember going to his home and calling him, and when he didn't answer, I went to find him, and I did find him, but he had passed away. And a part of me probably did. All the loneliness or loss or experience that I had in life as a young person at the pig farm, or the hardships of getting through it, had not prepared me for that. As a father, there's a part of you that dies. There's a part of you that can never come back from that. And to experience that and to hold my boy and to know that he was gone just changed me inside. And I can tell you that if you're watching this, if I would have told you the next chapter was called alcoholism or drug abuse, or if I told you that I taped my windows shut and I never left my home, you would still press
Everyone
the
would
spot.
completely get it.
Yep. And
It's as someone who was you know, a best friend and an observer, just as a fluke, I ended up calling Dan moments after he found Mason that day, and one of the greatest shocks of my life to just feel that pain and raw emotion. And in the months that ensued, I'll be honest, I didn't, like you're saying, if you became a drug addict or an alcoholic or just gave up on life, I think everyone would just go, I get it, right? But it took time. It took a long time to fight through, all of that pain and all of that anger, to get to the point where, I'll let you tell everyone how you process that now 2 years later, that
yeah,
how you've
it
been able to
wasn't an
pick
easy
yourself up.
road. Yeah, it wasn't an easy road, and it did take friendship and resources and people around me. And I just found myself angry at everything, and I just didn't know why. And the interesting thing about COVID was it gave me the opportunity to fall in love with my family again. Not that I wasn't in love with them, but it did give me opportunity to spend time with my son before he passed, and my other children, and my wife. And there came a point during my grieving where I had to recognize that there was other people, there was other children, and there was other things that I still needed to do. And I knew that having support like Randy and people around me wasn't enough. I had to get through this tragedy myself. All the resources around you will never allow you to take that step. You're the one that has to do it. And I had to change my outlook. I had to start celebrating the 22 years that I had with my son and stop grieving the loss of him in the future. The honest answer is that I look at now and I say sincerely and reflect on is I had 22 wonderful years. I had 22 years of memories that I can cherish every day, 22 years of pictures and activities and things that we've done in memories. The tragedy would have been not having those. So when I
Which
changed my
again,
mentality,
I think is, I hope that, anyone who is, viewing this, who have, God forbid, has gone through something as tragic and as similar, being able to get to the point of being able to say, I celebrate his life. I have gratitude for the memories, for, for this wonderful boy that was in my life for 22 years. It's hard to get there, but that has to be the answer. Yes.
you have to. The loss of my son wasn't hard enough. I packed up his home and I put his stuff in storage because as a father, I wasn't strong enough to go through it. It wasn't time. And the storage facility burnt down and erased my son. And that was such a hard point for me because there wasn't a box of memories. I couldn't go and just smell the sweater or go through items. He was gone, like he was erased. And it created all kinds of questions for me because I didn't think that he had enough time in this world. And I didn't think that he had the chance to show everyone the best version of himself. And the more I reflect on not just his loss, but the loss of his belongings and him being erased, made me recognize something very important. And this wasn't an overnight moment. It wasn't something. It took a lot of thought and a lot of work and a lot of conversations with you and with friends. But I recognized that he probably was my greatest accomplishment for many reasons, because he made me recognize how important it was to celebrate him and to share him. And it gave me an opportunity to look at how important my friends and my family and the things around me are. And it got me the opportunity to slow down and realize how important my time, my friendships, my life was. So his greatest gift was teaching me that things aren't forever. And in a moment, not just him, but anybody can be erased. And they say, a good friend of mine, Tommy, said at his funeral, a person is not forgotten when people say his name. And my son's name is Mason, and I say that very proud, and I tell the story. So often I look back at his life and my life with him and where I am now, and I wonder if I grieved the fact that he hadn't done much in his life when I look back at all of the chapters in the book of my own life. The honest answer is he really did so much. He spent 22 years making sure that I recognized how important he was, that I would want the world to know it. And he became my greatest lesson, and perhaps the greatest lesson for the people who are watching this right now. Because when you reflect on your life or your children's or the people around you, we're not forgotten when people say their name. You need to find what is the most important version of you or those people, and you find a reason to speak it, or you find a reason to make your mark. Mason's greatest accomplishment was ensuring that I loved him enough that I would never let him be forgotten, and he would be the lesson in the pavement for the rest.
One of the most powerful things that I've ever seen in my life, and I've never seen anyone watch it without tears, is Dan, since losing Mason in the fire, again pulled himself out of the fire and went on and started performing again. And the cornerstone of
we paused there, Randy.
What's that? No, I didn't.
Because we paused after I said journey. There was a blip. Yeah.
Okay, we'll pick it up again. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, right now we're good. We're back on.
Okay. One of the things that probably one of the most powerful things that I've ever seen in my life is that in losing Mason, and I remember the day Mason was born too. We broadcast it live on the radio, and in losing Mason and then losing everything of his in the fire, and you yourself, going through a awful grieving process and pulling yourself back out of the fire and going around the world and going back and entertaining again. I will invite people, because the stories just take too long to tell, but we'll give out Dan's websites, but go and watch some of the videos of him on Italy's Got Talent and America's Got Talent and Canada's Got Talent. And I have to tell you that one of the most powerful things that, without question, that I've ever seen in my life is when you were on America's Got Talent, you were standing on stage, and Simon Cowell, Only Like He Can, asked you the question and said, Dan, so, risking your life in doing all of this, why are you doing this? And what did you tell him?
Well, that's a good question, but the honest answer is I'm a proud father of 5, and I'm certainly trying to push the boundaries of my own existence, but I'd like to be a good example to my family. And I think that if I summed all of that up in the importance of it, it's really about pushing the boundaries of who I am. But more importantly, in this situation, I really wanted the world to say my son's name. And I was on the biggest platform, the largest audience, the biggest show in the world. And I knew that by telling my story and sharing myself, the world would say his name.
So again, I think for me, and probably for our audience, one of the most powerful things you could ever possibly witness is someone finding purpose in something that is such a tragedy. One of the things that probably, most of the audience don't know is, what was it that you were doing on all these shows? And I know that there was a variety of, different things that you did. You were in a straitjacket, hung upside down by a helicopter, and, the potential of having your arms cut off with a chainsaw. Set this up for us and tell us what it is that you're doing.
I was doing the highest aerial escape. I mean, I was shackled and strapped. I was locked in a bag, and I was locked in a box. And I had to pick 8 locks in 60 seconds before the automatic release dropped the box, and I fell to my death. So I was literally risking all, in my opinion, for the right reasons. And I was pushing my own success, my own boundaries with the right mission in mind. I think that if you really believe in yourself and you believe that you're heading for the right purpose, the right reason, you could achieve anything. And this is a great example of me finding the best version of myself that day.
Absolutely, just absolutely fascinating and astounding to see that happen. And you know, I've seen Dan speaking on stage many times at conferences, and you know, one of the things that he often jokes about is when he goes and transitions from, you know, from one career to the next, of saying, you know, I was in radio and then I thought, well, I'll risk my life and go up in a box and, you know, maybe set it on fire and see if I die. That must have been, that would just be a natural for anyone. Mm-hmm. And, you know, while I think everyone looks at this and says, how does this apply to me? For me, and one of the greatest reasons of having you on this show is being able to help people to overcome that psychological doubt, you know, that blocks you from doing that, from taking that chance. And I think that you are, you know, the quintessential, I think, champion of that, of everyone. I'm not suggesting that, you know, success for the people that are watching are, you know, risking your life or getting your hands cut off by a chainsaw or any of these things. For me, it was, what's the mindset? What do you share with someone where you've never been in radio before, but you jump in feet first and you try it? You've never owned a company before, but you start a tattoo business that, you know, becomes a chain of companies. You've never done magic or illusion or escape artistry before, and you just go ahead and do it. For me, the fascination, and this is the world that I work in every day, right, is that how do you get someone to keep going when the voices in their head, and I'm sure you hear them, and the voices of everyone around you are saying, why do you think that's going to work for you?
You know, I've been put, as my story that most of you have just watched, I've been put in that situation where, why do I do it, or why do I push past? I'm not telling anybody to hang from their feet from a straitjacket in a helicopter. Stupid. I've done a lot of stupid things, and I'm not suggesting that's what you do. That's what I chose to do. I want you to find what challenges you and take that first step, maybe the second, maybe the 10th. The idea here is, it's not to do something extreme. It's to do something that's extreme to you. It's we all have that little birdie in our ear that says, I can't do that, or I should stop, or I'm afraid. Why? You can't be so afraid of dying that you refuse to live. You can't. We only.
Wait, stop. Say that again. I love that. Everybody listen to this, because I think that, I know that's your life's philosophy, but slow it down for people and say that line again.
I mean that sincerely. You cannot be so afraid of dying that you refuse to live.
Amazing.
I love that. And the reason why is because not once a week, once a month, once a year, every day I challenge myself to find the best version of me. That could be the way I kiss my wife, how I hold my daughter's hand, how I say something polite to a lady that works at a drive-through, or how I wave at somebody on the street. It doesn't matter what it is. I just try to find the best in that moment. The only thing that I can't buy in this world is time. Losing my son is a great example that we don't get unlimited time. We never know when it's our choice time to leave. We don't have that ability. So because of that, I got to make the best of today. So as you're watching this and thinking about it and sitting at home or business or whatever you're doing, what was great about today? And it could be the taste of something fantastic, a strong coffee. It could be a smile. It doesn't matter, but you got to seek it. And when you get very, very good at finding what's good about the day, you find yourself challenging yourself more and more. I want to get more out of the day. So when I wake up in the morning and get dressed just like you, brush my teeth just like you, get in the car and deal with life just like you, I'm really looking for what's fantastic about that day. And when I go to bed at the end of the day, I have to look at my own life and I have to evaluate what I've done. And I got to see if I put something in my cup. I got to see if I made myself, my family, my friends, my colleagues, my life better in some way. And if I did, I can sleep real well. If I didn't, I got to try a little harder tomorrow. Now,
So for
I've
someone, sorry, go ahead.
I've
Finish.
utilized escapology, magic, mentalism, business, many of the things I've utilized in order to find that success for me, not for you or customers or an audience, but for me. So if start with something small. It's like an amazing act of kindness. Start with buying a coffee for a stranger or doing something, but find something that makes you better in yourself. And if you do that every day, in a week, in a month, in a year, you'll be such a better person inside and you'll be so hungry for your tomorrow that you will find your best version of yourself at the end of it. If you do that, you'll be fantastic in every way.
And there is no plan B, right?
No, we only get one shot at this life. How will people say your name?
Wow. It just, incredibly powerful. I'm fascinated. I mean, we've known each other, best friends for 30 years, and I'll ask you this question that I probably don't even know the answer to. What's the next hill? What's the next mountain, the next goal for you, regardless of whatever the world thinks or you think in this moment that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, as we shoot this video right now, 2 days ago, Australia's Got Talent just aired a new segment that I was on. Today, France's Got Talent released a new segment that I'm on. And the Got Talent franchise, or the shows or the escapes that I do, don't evaluate or measure my success in life. I can tell you, even speaking and looking at you today, the next chapter for me is to find an opportunity to tell my story and to find people like you who are watching this and motivate you to find that best version of yourself. What does my tomorrow hold? I hope it holds many, many days, because I got so much to give, so many stories to tell, and so many people to affect. I don't want to motivate you.
I know that as your buddy, that one of the things that really drives Dan is that ability to do this, to share his story, to know that maybe, just maybe, beyond hope, there was one person that saw something inside of themselves. And I've watched this on stage when you speak, and all the images and all the videos and all the props and all the stories, and I mean, the audience, there is not a dry eye in the house. And every time you finish talking, when I see the audience jump to their feet in applause, and I just think, God, you did it, right? You really did it. You have impacted somebody. I just pray they take this home, and it causes them to do something that, perhaps they would have stopped themselves from doing. So keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't want to motivate people. I want to affect them. I want to influence their tomorrows. I want them to hug their family a little tighter. I want them to tell their friends they love each other. I want them to find the best version of them. And I want them to live for today and look forward to tomorrow. And if I can pull that off at the end of every time I talk, entertain, or socialize, I made the best of today.
Well, and I think the best way to finish this up is, how I like to end all of these interviews, and to throw something at you a little bit different. Out of the hat I pulled. So, Dan, with all these things you do in life, anything? Is there anything you're afraid of? We're all afraid of something. What?
The dentist. I'm petrified of the dentist. I am a 52-year-old man, and I haven't been to the dentist in 46 years.
46 years. You're terrified of the dentist. And it's guys, he is telling you the absolute truth that the guy that hangs suspended hundreds of feet in the air in a straitjacket wrapped in chains was 60 seconds before he plunges to his death. When he goes to the dentist's office and sits in the car outside while his beautiful little girl goes into the appointment, and then Dan has to go in to pay the bill at reception, he has to sit down because he's so filled with anxiety. True?
We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to talk about it. I in my lifetime, I have I jumped out of a plane. I have been bitten by a shark. I lost the end of my finger to a cougar. I've been bitten by a rattlesnake. I have escaped the craziest underwater tortures. I just can't go to the dentist. I don't even like it. I don't like to talk about it. If Randy, if you, my friend, was telling me about a dental thing, I would just get up and leave. I don't care. I'll drive 2 hours home to not talk about it. Done. It's not going to happen. To make me uncomfortable already.
All right. Well, we'll let that go, and you can go home and brush now. If you could do that for us, that would be fantastic, buddy. Listen, I can't thank you enough for your time today. Like always, my goal and my hope is that people will not only learn information, but they will become so inspired that they will take action. If you're open to it, if people have questions or want to reach out to you, if they've gone through major tragedies and maybe you can answer a question, or they're looking for somebody to come to their conference and speak, whatever it is, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm touchable. If you find me online, it's really me. You're not going to get somebody else. I love the idea that when my phone rings, I actually answer it. You can find me, just do a search, Danny Z with 4 Z's. You'll find me all over the web. My website is dannywith4z's.com. My email is dan@dannyz.com. And I can promise you, text, call, or email, you get me.
He actually does. I mean, every time I text him, every time I call him, he answers the phone and goes, "Call you back in 5 minutes." Right? But you always answer the phone. I've always
You know what? I answer the phone and
I
I say, "Is everything okay?" And if it is, I'm busy, but I take the call. I'll always take the call.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time so much. I owe you a lunch, and we'll get together and chat soon. Thanks, buddy.
See you, buddy. Cheers.
And to you, thank you so much for joining us here today. We will post here on today's page, today's topic, and our guest, and all the contact information if you want to reach out to him. He truly is one of the most remarkable men I have ever met. Until next time, for everyone here at Elevate, have an amazing day and be well.